It's true.
Yeah.
It's the time of year where I wish I could wear one.
You can, yeah.
Do clothes really have a gender?
That's fair. Well, for me.
Can everybody hear me okay? All right. Good morning. I'm Greg Gassard. I represent the heart of Texas and proud to be chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Before we get started this morning, several of us just got back from spending time with our Progressive Caucus member, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, along with Zohran Mamdani. Really just an inspiring conversation that we were able to have about how Mr. Mamdani was able to speak so directly to voters about lowering costs, making life affordable for working class people, and re-inspiring so many of those voters who have just stopped voting or have a bad view of both political parties. And so there was a lot that we were able to learn there. And also late last night, the Congressional Progressive Caucus congratulated Adelita Grijalva, progressive champion, on her primary victory in Arizona last night. Her vote share, alongside Deja Fox's, another progressive candidate in that race, is over 80% of the Democratic primary vote share last night. So alongside Mr. Mamdani's huge win in New York City, beating Andrew Cuomo by over 12 points while being outspent by $25 million, alongside progressives in Arizona racking up over 80% of the vote last night, I think sends a strong message to those of us here in Washington, D.C. and across the country that Democratic primary voters are ready for change, are ready for bold, progressive change. They want us to really step up and support working class people in a way that we haven't in recent years. And I think it is a clear message to the establishment that things have to change in the Democratic Party establishment, and our voters are demanding that change. And the Progressive Caucus has heard that message loud and clear. And so today we want to announce our 4 new Progressive Caucus task forces and our task force leadership, which will drive forward a bold pro-working class agenda that will take on billionaires, take on the establishment, root out corruption, and actually deliver for working people. Right now, we know Americans are getting screwed by corrupt politicians and big corporations that are driving up costs while keeping pay and benefits down. So our new task forces will go directly at those big problems facing Americans by fighting corruption, fighting corporate greed, lowering costs, and winning better pay and benefits. We will champion those bold policies that are easy for everyday people to understand, whether you pay attention to politics or not. And we want to quickly change the lives of working people. No more nibbling around the edges, no more complicated formulas that leave most Americans wondering if our policies will actually help them or anyone at all, and no more being afraid of billionaires or big special interests inside of the Democratic Party. We're going to be willing to get uninvited from some fancy dinners in order to win back working class people's trust, win elections, and actually make change. Our goal here is to build out a progressive economic platform that polls much better than the Democratic Party, much better than the Republican Party, much better than Donald Trump. Actually promise those policies, then campaign on those policies, and then win a majority and begin to pass them. It's that simple. It's not a radical idea. And so you could call these ideas progressive, or you could call them common sense. Our goal is that pretty soon you can call it the Democratic platform and the law of the land. So it's my pleasure today to introduce the people who will lead us in this effort. Congresswoman Yasemin Ansari will chair our Lowering Costs Task Force. Dave Min will chair our Fighting Corruption Task Force alongside Vice Chair Hank Johnson. Congresswoman Becca Balint will lead our Ending Corporate Greed Task Force, and Emily Randall will lead our Better Pay and Benefits Task Force alongside our Vice Chair Mark DeSaulnier. Lastly, our Deputy Chair Omar is succeeding progressive legend Barbara Lee as the new chair of the Promoting Peace and Security Task Force, because we know we got to be doing that every single day here in this country, whether it's a Republican or a Democrat in the White House. And so I'm proud to call up our Deputy Chair, Ilhan Omar.
Thank you so much, Chair Kassar. And I don't know, I've long been disinvited to those fancy parties you speak of. And so I'm glad the rest of the Democratic Party will be joining us soon. It is really an honor to be with you all today and to chair the Promoting Peace and Security Task Force and follow in the footsteps of my mentor, the incredible Barbara Lee. As someone who survived war as a child, I know how destructive war can be. I've seen firsthand how our continuous involvement in foreign conflicts is not making our country any safer. Instead, it is costing lives, shattering future hopes and dreams, and damaging our reputation around the world. At a time when the President of the United States is actively moving our foreign policy in the wrong direction, we need to counter the rising tide of militarism. From bombing Iran without congressional approval to the dismantling of U.S. aid, a program that has saved millions of lives around the world, to ending the refugee resettlement program that closes the door on those fleeing unthinkable situations, this task force is needed now more than ever to hold this corrupt administration accountable. To achieve peace and true security, we must center our foreign policy around human rights, justice, and peace. Our task force will focus on our global armed presence, instead investing in diplomacy that will allow us to reorient our engagement in the world. With wars in Ukraine, in Yemen, in the Republic of Congo, in Sudan, in Gaza, the U.S. must use our power and our purse to advance the values we claim to hold. I believe that we, the United States, when we say that we are champions of human rights, democracy, and peace, we should mean it. And America has led the world in standing up for human rights and peace before. It is time for us to seize the mantle of leadership again. I'm excited to get to work. And next, it is my honor to introduce my friend from California, Representative Min.
Thank you, Congresswoman. Thank you, Congresswoman Omar, and thank you, Leader Kassar, for allowing me this opportunity, as well as bringing on a couple other freshmen. We're part of a really vibrant freshman class. I was just elected to succeed Katie Porter, very big shoes to fill in one of the closest races in the country. And a bit of background, I have spent my career really fighting to uphold the rule of law. I started my career right after 9/11, right after the Enron and WorldCom accounting scandals. And I turned down very rich, lucrative Wall Street jobs to go instead to the SEC to try to crack down on the corporate fraud, the greed that was endemic to our markets. And unfortunately, we're seeing a rise of that, a free pass given by the Trump administration to everything that's happening right now. I went on to go teach law at UC Irvine, which is where I live today. And I have the privilege of representing one of the most beautiful areas in the country. We do have lots of fancy dinner parties. I don't always get invited to them, but I represent Irvine, Newport Beach, Huntington Beach, Laguna Beach, and a few other areas. And right now, I will just tell you that my constituents, I believe Americans, are fed up with the corruption we are seeing both in our government and in the private sector. We have an SEC right now that is toothless, that is not enforcing the rule of law. We have a president that is making money hand over fist from his office, whether it's through the real estate deals that foreign governments are giving to his family, whether it's the meme coin that he started, whether it's through anything else. And I think people are sick and tired of seeing all this happening right now. And they're sick and tired of what Donald Trump described as a swamp. Our colleagues, and I've come here and been shocked and awed by the level of corruption we're seeing from members of Congress, people on the Supreme Court, in the presidential administration, going all the way to the top. We need to do all we can to fight back to build a more transparent, more fair, and equitable economy where, like my parents who are immigrants to this country, who came here because of these values, they believed in the idea that you could come here, work hard, it was a fair economy, it was not rigged against working people, and people are losing faith in our economy and our government. I think it's important for not just progressives, but for anyone who cares about revitalizing the American dream to first and foremost fight on an anti-corruption agenda. So grateful for this opportunity. Look forward to unveiling some of the initiatives that we're going to be rolling out. This is an extremely important topic for people around this country. Thanks so much. And I think with that, I have the privilege of introducing Congressmember Balint.
Thank you so much,
Thank you.
Dave. Good morning. Good morning. I am so proud to stand with all of these folks behind me here. We're here fighting for our communities. We are fighting for working people across this country, and we are fighting to unrig a system that makes it so hard for Americans to get a fair shot. So what is it that we want? What is it that we all want in here? What we want is to be able to have a sense of control over our lives. I don't care what party you come from. I don't care what region of the country you live in. We want to feel that we have some control over our own destiny. We want to be the main characters of our lives. We don't want things to happen to us. We want things to be able to be made possible for by what we do and the things that we put into place. So you've heard, I'm sure, the phrase that absolute power corrupts absolutely. But the reverse is also true. Absolute powerlessness corrupts absolutely. What do I mean by that? When you have a sense of powerlessness, you don't have a vision for the future. You don't have hope in the democracy. You don't have hope in the structures. And you get paralyzed and you get stuck. So part of what we're trying to do here is fight against that feeling of powerlessness. The task force that I'm heading up is about giving people more control over their lives. It's about protecting working people from the power and greed of giant corporations and predatory billionaires. And it's about giving working people fairness and a level playing field. That's not too much to ask for. And we need to deliver on that. This is about our grocery bills. When one massive retailer controls everything on the shelves. It's about your job, where small businesses are swallowed up by the giants. It's about healthcare, where pharmaceutical giants jack up prices on the medications that you need. It's about your housing, where landlords and companies use AI to rig rents. That's what we're talking about. And they raise it just enough so that you can continue living paycheck to paycheck, and again, feed that sense of powerlessness. So, of course, Americans feel like the system is rigged against them. Because it is. They're not imagining it. You feel it when you go to buy groceries, and you empty your wallet, but the bag of food is half empty. You feel it when you get sticker shock, when you're trying to fill up your car, trying to get to work. You feel it when your health care is absolute crap, but you're paying through the nose. You feel it when your wages are completely flat and you can't afford a house. The system is all wrong, and we have to be in the business of changing the system. We have got to break up concentrated corporate power that continues to drive up prices and keep wages low. We got to raise the minimum wage to reflect the real cost of living. We have to hold big corporations and greedy billionaires accountable for what they do. We have to go after monopolies that drive up prices while giving us fewer choices and giving workers poorer wages. We have to make real campaign finance reform. It can't be talk. It has to be systemic change. We need to unrig the system. And we are here today together to commit to fighting for a different future for all of us. One in which we feel a sense of control over our lives. And we can do this. We will do this. And now I'm very happy to introduce my colleague, Representative Hank Johnson, Vice Chair of the Fighting Corruption Task Force. It is an honor to serve with you, Mr. Johnson. Come on up.
And it is indeed an honor to serve with you, Representative Balint, and all of my colleagues here on the stage, champions for justice all. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm Hank Johnson representing Georgia's 4th Congressional District, and I'm happy to have been appointed as the Vice Chair of the Fighting Corruption Task Force, which is led by none other than my good friend, Professor Min,
Who I think had to just step away.
who just had to step away. So I look forward to working with him. You know, corruption starts at the top. A fish rots from the top and goes all the way down to the tail. And we've got rot at the top. The rot is not just limited to the executive branch. It's also infected the judicial branch, the United States Supreme Court, which seems to be hell-bent on doing everything it can to change the way that we govern ourselves in this country, despite the clear and unambiguous language of the Constitution that has as its foundation 3 branches of government that are co-independent, and they provide a check and a balance on each other. So this delicate system of checks and balances in this country has been working well over the last 249 years, but because of the rot at the top of the Supreme Court, the MAGA Supreme Court majority has decided to change the way that this country, this democracy operates. It has changed it by giving Trump immunity from prosecution for criminal acts committed while performing official responsibilities, and it has given itself the power to determine what is official. And so with that open door, Trump has driven corruption to new levels in this country. Now, the Supreme Court allows him to fire government workers despite protections that they have under the law. He can fire them. And in firing them, he can shut down an entire department. The Department of Education is next on the target list. He's already shut down the CFPB, the U.S. aid organization, and done his best to neuter the work of other agencies. He's reshaping our government, reshaping our governance into what he wants it to be. Because after he fires all of these dedicated, loyal federal employees, he's going to bring back a bunch of Project 2025 applicants who've been cleared by the Heritage Foundation to go to work for the federal government. And so in order to stop this corruption, we've got to stop what's happening at the United States Supreme Court. So it means term limits, and it means a code of conduct for Supreme Court justices that is enforceable, that has an enforcement mechanism. And so I'm going to be working closely with Professor Min and other right-thinking members of Congress to bring about the kind of reforms, the structural reforms that we need in order to ensure that this government works for not just the wealthy and the well-connected, but it works for we the people. And with that, I'm pleased to turn the mic over to Rep. Ansari.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Representative. Thank you, first of all, to the chair of the Progressive Caucus, Greg Casar. I'm Yasemin Ansari. I proudly represent Phoenix, Glendale, and Guadalupe. And I am so excited to be standing here alongside my colleagues in the Progressive Caucus to launch these task forces. Our shared goal is very simple: delivering real results for the American people. In my home state of Arizona, people are being crushed by the rising cost of rent and housing, the inaccessibility and lack of ability to afford basic energy costs like air conditioning in the extreme heat, the crushing everyday costs of education, childcare, elder care, and simply commuting. And we know it's not just in Arizona. Working families across our nation are asking, they are begging for solutions. That's why I'm honored to lead the Lowering Cost Task Force, where my colleagues and I will put the focus back on actually lowering costs and ensuring that families can make ends meet without having to choose between essential needs. Since Donald Trump took office, we have seen this administration and congressional Republicans quickly and systematically dismantle the progress that we have worked so hard to achieve. Donald Trump ran on a campaign of lowering costs for the American people, and he has done just the opposite. We are 177 days into this presidency, and he has done nothing to fulfill those promises. Instead, Republicans are making it harder and harder for working families to get by, gutting the Department of Education, withholding over $6.8 billion from our schools, leaving our children and our teachers struggling, kicking 17 million people off of health care while driving up premiums, deductibles, and copays for millions more, cutting safety nets for families with the largest cuts to nutritional assistance in American history. This is not progress, it's cruelty. And the only people seeing so-called cost cuts are billionaires who are benefiting and filing their tax returns. This task force is one of the many ways we are going to fight back. We will focus on delivering bold policies that will help working families, and we will have bills ready to pass when Democrats take back the majority in 2026. Thank you so much for joining us. And next up, I am so excited to introduce my colleague from Washington's 6th Congressional District, Representative Emily Randall, who will be chairing the Better Pay and Benefits Task Force.
Thank you so much. It is such an honor and a joy to be here with Chair Kassar and with my Progressive Caucus colleagues. You know, I didn't imagine myself getting into politics as a young person. The leaders that I saw in my community were teachers and firefighters and Puget Sound Naval Shipyard workers like my dad, folks who had access to good jobs that would allow them to build the lives that they dream of for their kids, for their grandkids. And, you know, those opportunities for reliable jobs with good benefits that you can count on are harder and harder and harder to achieve in this economy. And even when economic signals look like the economy is on a positive trajectory, it's not always good for everyday working people. And what we know to be true, is that when we empower workers, when we ensure that folks are paid for their labor and have the benefits that they need to take care of their kids or their aging parents, when they are sick themselves, when folks can afford childcare and groceries and a roof over their head, when they feel valued for their work, our economy thrives. Working people are the engine of a working economy. And I could not be prouder to have the chance to chair this Better Wages and Benefits Task Force because we have a lot of work to do to ensure that working people are at the center of our narrative, to be sure that we are working alongside the leaders in our community to empower our neighbors and to make an economy that works for everyone. And, you know, as a state lawmaker in Washington for the last 6 years, I had a chance to work on some really exciting nation-leading policy to pass and expand paid family leave, to ensure that we had pay transparency in all public job descriptions that were posted in the state, to ensure that anyone who journeyed out of an apprenticeship would do so with a transferable associate's degree. So when the economy or their family circumstances or their health and their bodies changed, they didn't have to start at square one to continue bringing home the wages that they needed to support their family. I'm excited for the work that we will do together as a caucus and alongside working people and labor leaders across the country to build and introduce policies, to pass policies when we retake the majority that will center working people and ensure our economy doesn't just work for the richest and most well-connected, but that it works for all of us. And now I will proudly pass the mic back to our chair, Rep. Kassar.
Thank you so much. We could probably take a couple of questions before we got to turn the room around. And, of course, please do direct your questions to the task force chairs as well. If y'all will just say your name and outlet. Thank you.
Leah Breedenbrand, Red Television, and my question is actually for Congresswoman Ansari. I was hoping you could give some on-camera reaction to last night's special election, and have you had a chance to talk with Ms. Grijalva?
Yeah, well, I'm very excited, first of all, to welcome another woman to the Arizona delegation and another progressive woman at that. Obviously, soon to be Congresswoman Grijalva has a long history in public service, deeply rooted in her community, and I really look forward to working with her. I called her last night shortly after the results became official and have communicated a little bit today, and I'm really looking forward to that. I also am really impressed with the campaign that Deja Fox ran, and I think that it's extremely important for us to make sure that we are continuing to uplift young people in the Democratic Party and make sure that young people know that they will be elevated and, you know, encouraged to be in leadership. And I hope she continues in politics as well. So really excited. I think it was great news for Arizona and for the country.
Sorry, and for that second part of your question, is that a separate question or related to this morning?
Yes,
the same. Okay. And if either of you all want to speak to this, this morning, I think that Representative Mamdani made the really clear case that we need, as the Democratic Party, to stop just talking to the political bubble and talk to everybody that's outside of that bubble. For too long, campaigns have relied on political consultants to just talk to the people that pay the most attention to politics. But the Democratic Party so badly needs to talk to working people everywhere. Right now, Donald Trump is screwing over everyone that isn't a billionaire. And we need to go talk to all of those people. And Mr. Mamdani was very successful at doing that. You know, there's been a lot of attention to that swing voter out in the suburbs. And, of course, we need to speak to those voters. But there's been less attention in the political world around the huge number of voters that typically have voted for the Democratic Party, that might live in our big cities, but who feel left behind, who feel like they just get a TV ad or a mail piece right before Election Day and nothing else. And I think what Mr. Mamdani and Ms. Ocasio-Cortez have been able to do is to engage with and connect with and hear from everyday folks that don't pay attention to politics every single day, and to talk to them year-round, and talk to them about the stuff that everyday people care about, not just the stuff that most political people or the people in the Washington, D.C. bubble care about. So I thought that was very beneficial. I think as it relates to these task forces, that's exactly the work of these task forces. You know, for example, in the past, the Democratic Party has pushed forward child care proposals where there's complex formulas for how you get a child care voucher, and the money gets sent to a governor who will then put together block grants that maybe someday get to somebody. That just doesn't work anymore. And I think what these task forces are going to be working on, and what campaigns like Mr. Mamdani's show, is that if we're clear that we are going to tax billionaires and lower child care costs for everyone, that's something everybody can understand, and that's a way that we can earn back the trust of those everyday voters who just don't buy the typical and traditional DC way of doing things.
Hi, Lucy Hawks of Fox News. So how are Democrats in congressional districts that are more competitive, not places like New York City, going to respond to Republican attacks against them, painting Mamdani as a communist, a socialist, and assigning that to people in these districts?
Well, you know, one of our task force chairs, Congressman Min, represents a swing district. And you don't have to be a Democratic voter or a Republican voter to hate Washington, D.C. corruption. And so I think the Progressive Caucus is going to work to make sure the Democratic Party platform is a true anti-corruption platform, and that we have anti-corruption policies that apply to all political parties, that apply to all politicians and administrators. And I think that's what really wins voters over. And that way we don't have to run around scared about what the next political ad is going to say and its lies about one of us. Instead, we want to tell the truth to people and want to turn a new leaf in the Democratic Party by taking on corruption and taking on the people that take advantage of conservative and progressive voters alike. I don't know if there's anything you want to add.
Yeah, happy to. So I don't represent a super competitive district right now, but I have. For 6 years in the state legislature, I represented the most competitive district in Washington state. And in that position, I worked on policies that spoke to working people. I worked on policies that ensured that folks of all political persuasions who weren't making enough money had the opportunities to make more money, had the opportunities to access childcare, had the opportunities to access education that would allow them to build their career. And what we saw in Washington state was that those policies delivered results in people's pocketbooks, at their kitchen tables, and at the ballot box. And while most of the country shifted to the right last election cycle in 2024, Washington state didn't. Washington state had a history of delivering results for people, and the voters responded to it. And I think, there's a lot of pundits out there who will say, oh, you have to talk a certain way in a purple district. You have to talk a certain way to folks who have a potential to vote Republican. But I think when you talk to people about the issues that matter to them, when you talk to folks about how they can be more empowered to make the decisions for their life, to build their lives and their futures, then they will hear you. And, we don't all live in New York City. None of us, in fact, live in New York City, but we know how to talk to working people in our districts. And I think there are tools and inspiration that we can get from Mr. Mamdani's campaign in New York about, the method of communication, the mode of communication, and a really simplified message that is about delivering results for real people that translate across the country.
Can I just follow up with
Sure.
that? You said method and mode of
Yeah.
communication and campaigns, but what about the substance? What about the issues?
Yeah.
Are you going to be running those in competitive districts too?
So, I think people across the country in competitive districts and not competitive districts want to be able to afford the roof over their heads, the food on their table, childcare for their kids. People in all districts want to be able to build the life that they dream of and be empowered to make the decisions that are right for them. There's nothing radical about that. There's nothing New York City about that. That's real policy for real people. And I think, folks in one district might use a different grocery store as an example or tell the story in a different way because it's really rooted in culture and community. And folks in Vermont, talk about going shopping in a different way than folks in Bremerton, Washington. But we all have the same experiences, and we all want politicians who understand those experiences and will talk to us like we are partners, not customers.
Last question.
All right, Michael, I'll catch you afterwards. Sorry, they're going to kick us out of the room here in a second. Yeah.
Oriana with it.
Yeah, hi, Oriana.
I wanted to get your thoughts here about yesterday's race. What does it mean to have Deja Fox, who's a tech hacker, lose at the same time that Democrats are trying to master the whole social media landscape, and there are other influencers that are running for office, such as Karen Grisale in Illinois, Isaiah Martin in Texas. I guess what does her loss send to the rest of the party?
Well, I was in Tucson, Arizona with Adelita Grijalva and Senator Sanders and AOC earlier this year. And we showed up. It was not for a particular election campaign. Mr. Grijalva had just passed. His funeral was still coming up a couple days later, I think. And we showed up to a high school gym because we were hoping that we could fill up the whole high school gym, 2,000 people at Catalina High School. And as we pulled up to the high school gym, there was a big, long line. And I said, well, you can let us out here. And the cab driver said, no, we're still 5 blocks away from the high school. 25,000 people showed up and filled the entire football field. So we couldn't fit, obviously, in the high school gym anymore. So I think what last night's election showed is that there is enormous energy out there amongst Democratic voters that want to see something different. And I think the story from Ms. Fox's campaign actually isn't – I think that she actually did very well. Early polls put her, I think, at 5% or even below that. I think Adelita did extremely well. I think many people that first saw this race thought that less progressive candidates would take a bigger chunk of her vote share. So I think that if you look at Mr. Mamdani's campaign and then you look at the election last night, I think the story isn't of anybody underperforming. In fact, I think it's a story of anti-establishment, pro-progressive, working class first voters or voters electing candidates of their choice right now in big numbers. I think I heard at that rally so many people that came and said, I wasn't with Bernie the first time, but man, maybe he's been right this entire time. And so I think there's a large number of voters that used to trust the establishment more in the Democratic Party than now are looking for something different. And so I think the story from last night is that Ms. Fox and Ms. Grijalva's combined vote share is over 80%. And if you went and told somebody, around this room that that's what was going to happen 2 or 3 months ago, I think they would have told you there's no way that's going to happen. I think that's the story from last night is I don't think it's about influencers. I think it's a story about how, those that are willing to stand up to power and be progressive are doing very well in primaries here during the second Trump administration.
Really quickly, thank you so much for doing this. You're in your second term as chair of the Progressive Caucus. 3 of the 5 past chairs are first term. And can you talk about how important it is to have people who are just coming in from their communities at these leadership tables? And do you hope that the way you all are approaching these task forces by letting anyone from anywhere who wants to serve, do you think that that's something that the rest of the caucus, the rest of the party can learn from?
Voters are asking us for new and fresh ideas and for us to not do things the same old way. And so I think members of Congress are listening. I think, Robert Garcia's election to lead the Oversight Committee is also a huge testament to that. The last time a Democratic sophomore led a committee in this building was 102 years ago. So I think the voters are asking for it and the party is starting to listen. Thanks a lot.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you.